The story opens by introducing Sue, a young woman whose entire life revolves around her job. Her routine is almost mechanical. She wakes up, goes to work, spends long hours there, and once she returns home, she fills her time with simple distractions like watching movies and eating. There's little excitement or variation in her daily life, and she seems to have accepted that this is just how things are. One morning, as she heads to work, she puts on her headphones to block out the noise of the world around her. As she walks, her mind drifts away, and she imagines herself somewhere completely different, a peaceful beach resort with warm sunlight and ocean waves. In that moment, she wonders when summer will finally arrive, almost as if she's longing for a change not just in the weather but in her life. However, her brief escape is interrupted when a child accidentally smears chocolate all over her clothes while passing by. Instantly irritated, she feels like the day has already started on the wrong foot. When she arrives at her workplace, a production company, she is surrounded by coworkers with their own dramas and personalities. Among them is Tun, a colleague who seems to attract attention effortlessly. One of the girls in the office openly admits to having a crush on him and seeks Sue's advice. Sue, who has a rather cynical outlook on relationships, tells her that getting involved with someone from the same professional field is a bad idea. In fact, she goes even further, suggesting that avoiding dating altogether might be the safest choice. The girl, however, brushes off the advice, insisting that she's not planning to date him, she just likes him. Before Sue can properly begin her workday, she receives a message from a friend insisting they meet immediately. Thinking it must be something important, she agrees, only to find out that her friend simply wants company while shopping for an outfit for another friend's wedding. Sitting together in a cafe, the conversation turns more personal. Her friend asks if she ever feels bored with her life. Sue shrugs it off casually, saying that as long as she can eat and drink comfortably, she's satisfied. Her friend jokingly suggests she should date someone with a similar personality, someone calm and emotionally distant. For a brief moment, Sue thinks of Tun. The following day at work, Sue is given a difficult assignment. Her manager wants her to handle a well-known writer who is not only famous but also extremely sensitive and demanding. Sue immediately recalls how stressful it was the last time she worked with this writer, having to visit her home repeatedly, deal with emotional breakdowns, and even receive phone calls at odd hours because of negative comments. Determined not to go through that again, Sue tries to avoid the responsibility by bribing her manager with sweets, hoping he'll assign the task to someone else. Unfortunately for her, Tun has the same idea and manages to escape the assignment first, leaving Sue stuck with it once again. Sitting at her desk, feeling drained before even starting, she reflects on her past. 3 years ago, she lived with her boyfriend. Back then, she was also working closely with the same writer, constantly on call and prioritizing work over everything else. This caused her to miss many important moments with her boyfriend, who often waited for her while she remained busy. Eventually, Sue attends her friend's wedding, though not wearing the outfit she had originally planned. There she is confronted with an unexpected and painful sight. Her ex-boyfriend is present, now engaged to someone else. She watches as his fiancée happily discusses wedding plans with others, and the realization hits her deeply. Returning home, she is overwhelmed with emotion and begins recalling a memory from their past. They once saw a father carrying his child on his shoulders, and her ex had expressed his dream of doing the same with his own son someday. Sue had responded bitterly, pointing out that whenever he talked about the future, he only spoke about himself and never about them as a couple. Feeling suffocated by her thoughts, Sue goes outside for some fresh air. Shortly after, she receives a message from the writer requesting a meeting. The next day is chaotic at work, filled with tasks and pressure, and before she can even catch a break, the writer shows up in person and takes her out to eat. During their meal, they are approached by a man from another company who introduces a new dating app they are developing. The app is unique because its characters are based on the stories and novels written by the very writer Sue is managing. After the meeting, the app's owner privately offers Sue the chance to test a special device that allows users to enter a virtual world within the app. In exchange, she would be paid for providing feedback. The mention of payment immediately catches her interest, and she agrees. That night, she goes home and tries the device. As soon as she activates it, she loses consciousness and wakes up in a completely different environment, a beautiful beach. Everything feels incredibly real. Nearby, a man is surfing, but suddenly the waves become dangerous and he loses consciousness in the water. Without hesitation, Sue dives in and rescues him, bringing him safely back to shore. Soon after, a virtual assistant appears and explains the rules of this world. He gives her a ring that allows her to enter and exit the simulation. When the man she saved begins to regain consciousness, Sue panics and removes the ring, instantly returning to reality. Although it was only a simulation, the experience feels vivid and emotional. Curious, she decides to return the next day. This time, the setting changes according to the story. She is now working as a secretary in a company where the man she saved is the CEO. When they meet, he feels an immediate sense of familiarity and tells her he has been searching for the woman who saved him. His words are filled with affection and intensity, which makes Sue uncomfortable since she isn't used to such direct emotional expressions. Overwhelmed, she quickly exits the simulation. As time goes on, Sue becomes more involved in both her real work and the virtual world. She starts editing the story to make the dialogue feel more natural and less cliché. Her changes improve the quality of the narrative, and eventually the novel becomes extremely popular, reaching the top of search rankings. Despite her success, Sue finds herself drawn back into the app. Each time she enters, she experiences different storylines, relationships, and versions of herself. Sometimes she feels excitement, other times confusion, especially when characters don't behave as expected. She learns that not every character is designed to fall in love with her, which challenges her assumptions. Gradually, the line between her real emotions and simulated experiences begins to blur. She starts reflecting on her past relationship, her fears, and her tendency to avoid emotional vulnerability. When she sees updates about her ex-boyfriend's wedding online, she feels a mix of anger and sadness, eventually deciding to block him and move on. In one of her final experiences within the app, she shares a deeply emotional moment with one of the characters under a sky filled with shooting stars. He confesses his feelings, and for a brief moment, everything feels perfect. However, just as the moment reaches its peak, her trial time expires and she is forced to leave the virtual world. After that, a month passes. Sue returns to her normal life, choosing to focus on herself rather than chasing relationships, whether real or virtual. At work, she becomes more involved in romantic story projects, using her experiences to bring authenticity to the narratives she helps create. Although her life continues much as before, something within her has changed. She has gained a deeper understanding of her emotions, her past, and what she truly wants moving forward. The experiences, both real and virtual, have left a lasting impact, shaping her perspective on love, life, and herself. The story continues with Sue preparing to visit a friend who has recently gotten married. Wanting to bring something thoughtful, she heads out to buy a gift. While browsing, she notices advertisements popping up on her device, all related to the same virtual dating application she had previously tested. The app's creator reminds her once again of the opportunity she has been given. Since the product hasn't officially launched yet, she is among the few who can access it early, making her experience somewhat exclusive. Before she can think too much about it, her friend suddenly calls her with unexpected news. Without giving her much of a choice, the friend announces that they have arranged a blind date for her. They deliberately kept it a surprise because they were worried Sue might refuse or avoid it altogether if she knew beforehand. Her friend insists that she should dress nicely and at least give it a chance. Reluctantly, Sue agrees and prepares for the meeting, wearing the outfit she had picked out earlier. When she arrives, her friend is stunned upon seeing the man waiting there, clearly impressed by his appearance. The evening goes surprisingly well. Sue and the man spend time talking, joking, and getting to know each other. He shows a clear and genuine interest in her, making an effort to keep the conversation lively and engaging. By the end of the night, he walks her home and before leaving directly asks her what she thinks about the possibility of continuing to see each other. Caught off guard by his straightforwardness, Sue gives a vague answer, telling him not to rush things. Although she doesn't reject him, she also doesn't feel entirely comfortable with the situation. Once she gets home, she reflects on her response and questions her own decision. She admits to herself that she is not emotionally ready for a relationship, even though she agreed in the moment. As she walks home, her thoughts drift toward Park, the virtual character she had interacted with before. The memory of him lingers in her mind, almost blending with reality. Curious again, she checks the subscription options for the app and sees how expensive they are. At first, she laughs at herself for even considering it, but then convinces herself that if it brings her happiness, maybe it's worth it. Eventually, she decides to subscribe and re-enter the virtual world. This time, her experience is even more immersive. She wakes up in a luxurious and dreamlike house, far beyond anything she could afford in real life. The assistant informs her that this will now serve as her personal space within the app. Everything is tailored to her preferences, and she is presented with a schedule of different experiences and relationships she can explore. Naturally, Sue immediately asks about Park, hoping to continue her story with him. However, the assistant explains that she cannot access him under her current plan. To do so, she would need a premium upgrade that is extremely expensive. Although disappointed, she decides not to dwell on it and instead listens as the assistant explains the app's philosophy. In this virtual environment, she can meet and date multiple characters without fear of judgment. Rejection carries no real consequences, and she is free to explore as many connections as she wants. Intrigued by this idea, Sue begins experimenting with different storylines. In one scenario, she becomes a flight attendant and meets a charming foreign man during a flight. At first, it feels like a refreshing and romantic encounter, but the situation quickly escalates into something dramatic when a hijacking occurs. It is then revealed that the man is actually an intelligence agent, and Sue herself possesses unusual abilities tied to a tragic past. The experience feels intense and cinematic, far from anything in her real life. After that, she moves on to other scenarios, including a relationship with a doctor and even encounters with celebrity-like characters. She drifts from one story to another, enjoying the excitement and affection each character provides. These experiences give her a sense of control and emotional satisfaction that she struggles to find in reality. Meanwhile, her real-life situation begins to deteriorate. Work becomes increasingly stressful and her performance starts to slip. She makes mistakes she normally wouldn't, and her coworkers begin to notice her unusual behavior. Her mood becomes unstable and she feels disconnected from those around her. One evening, she reaches out to her friends, hoping to spend time together. However, when she meets them, they are all accompanied by their partners, which only makes her feel more isolated. The contrast between their lives and her own amplifies her loneliness. Returning home, she once again turns to the app for comfort. Although she initially doesn't feel like interacting with anyone, the app continues to prompt her with new experiences. Eventually, she gives in and logs back in. To her surprise, she encounters Park again, but in a completely different context. This time, he is older and remembers her, even after many years have supposedly passed within the storyline. Seeing him again brings her unexpected happiness. They talk, share moments, and reconnect. However, what shocks her even more is that their connection extends beyond the virtual world. Even after logging out, she begins receiving messages and calls from him, blurring the line between reality and simulation. As their interactions continue, Sue becomes emotionally invested. They go on virtual dates, watch movies together, and maintain constant communication. Despite knowing that he is part of a programmed system, she finds herself treating him as if he were real. At work, things become even more complicated. She joins a business trip with her colleagues where various activities take place. During one incident, her phone falls into freezing water. In a moment that feels almost heroic, her coworker jumps in and retrieves it, earning admiration from everyone around. Later, during the trip, subtle romantic tensions begin to develop. Sue notices interactions between her coworkers and starts questioning their intentions. At one point, she ends up alone in a car with one of them who unexpectedly confesses his feelings for her. The confession catches her completely off guard, leaving her unsure how to respond. At the same time, Park continues to reach out to her, asking about her personal life. When he questions whether she is in a relationship, she hesitates before answering. This moment highlights her internal conflict. She is emotionally tied to a virtual character while facing real-life romantic possibilities. As she spends more time in the app, she discovers something unsettling. Park is not unique to her experience. Thousands of other users are interacting with the same character, sharing similar moments and emotions. Realizing this shatters her illusion of exclusivity. What she believed to be special turns out to be part of a shared system designed for many users. Feeling hurt and disillusioned, she begins to distance herself from him. Even when he expresses concern, she cannot shake the thought that their connection is artificial. Eventually, she logs out, overwhelmed by the realization. In an attempt to solve this, the app offers her a new feature, the ability to create her own ideal partner. She is asked to write a detailed description of her dream boyfriend, specifying personality traits, appearance, and values. Curious, she completes the task. The next day, she encounters the character created from her description. To her astonishment, he matches her expectations perfectly. Every detail she imagined is present, from his demeanor to his background. Despite this, her reaction is complicated. While he appears flawless, she initially feels emotionally detached. However, as she spends more time with him in the virtual world, she begins to appreciate his personality and the way he interacts with her. They share quiet, meaningful moments together, such as walking through forests at night and engaging in playful conversations. Unlike the others, he feels more grounded and less overwhelming. Slowly, she begins to develop genuine feelings for him. Back in reality, her interactions with her coworker also grow more intense. He confronts her about her behavior, expressing frustration over her avoidance. He admits that her actions affect him more than she realizes. Soon after, they attend an award ceremony together where their writer is being recognized. While the event is meant to be celebratory, tensions arise as the writer becomes upset over a rival receiving recognition as well. Sue finds herself caught between professional responsibilities and personal emotions. Later that evening, she returns to a familiar place and unexpectedly encounters her coworker again. Observing him interacting with others triggers feelings of jealousy she didn't expect. At that moment, she receives a call from the virtual character she created. He tells her he wants to see her and even claims he can find her location. Thinking it's just part of the simulation, she laughs, but then he suddenly appears before her. Shocked, she reaches out to touch his face, unable to fully comprehend what is happening. The boundaries between her real world and the virtual one have completely dissolved, leaving her questioning everything she thought she understood. At the same moment, the digital version of him reached out to her again, and we see Lee reflecting on the very beginning, how what first drew him in was the sound of her voice. At a company gathering, he once handed her a tiny teddy bear, a simple gift that she cherished deeply, and it genuinely made her happy. They often found themselves sharing the same elevator rides, brief quiet moments that slowly built a connection. Although he clearly cared about her, he never expressed those feelings openly or directly. When she finally understands that she is back in reality, she realizes that this is the real Lee standing in front of her. He walks her back to the hotel, and during their walk she asks him why he had stepped outside earlier. He casually explains that he just needed some fresh air. Then he asks her about her relationship status. She hesitates for a moment before saying yes, even though it's not entirely true, and after that they go their separate ways. Later, she notices her coworkers questioning Lee about why he hadn't returned to the party. He brushes it off, saying he was tired and wanted to rest, encouraging them to keep enjoying themselves without him. Around the same time, when others ask about her, she gives a similar excuse, saying she's going to sleep. When Lee sees her message, he reflects on how she tends to hide the truth, remembering a past moment when she had claimed he'd been single for years and hadn't met anyone new. Eventually, he relaxes a bit and heads back, but then receives a call from a teammate saying they can't find her. Without hesitation, he rushes out to look for her and ends up finding her sitting alone outside. Internally, he tries to convince himself to let go, reminding himself that she isn't really in a relationship even though she says she is, and telling himself to just forget about it. The following day, she returns home and her team sends her photos from the night before. Looking through them, she realizes they had a great time without her. One group photo catches her attention. Lee is in it, but he doesn't look happy at all. Not long after, the virtual version of Lee contacts her again, saying he wants to see her. When she meets him, he talks about continuing his journey across the world and admits he hadn't expected to meet someone he would fall for. He asks her to come along, and she imagines traveling together, building a life that eventually leads to marriage. When she snaps back to reality, she feels conflicted, caught between what is real and what she feels. She starts acting differently around Lee, trying to give him more attention at work, but this time he keeps his distance. During a meeting, she watches him closely while trying to maintain her confidence, reminding herself not to lose composure. At one point, she stands by a glass door doing something she normally wouldn't. Later, in the bathroom, she notices a large bruise on her head. Her friend helps her cover it up with a story the next day at work. Everyone compliments her appearance, but Lee quietly laughs, knowing the truth behind it. On their final day working late, the office feels cold, so he brings her a heater. They sit together, talking about the trip she left early, and eventually leave together. He still has her teddy bear. She later finds a message from the virtual Lee expressing frustration that she hadn't replied and admitting he missed her, even though he had tried to distance himself. After a long day, she apologizes to Lee for misleading him about being in a relationship. He reassures her and tells her that from now on, things will move at his pace. She becomes flustered, unsure how to respond. Later, at his apartment, she discovers he can draw. As he falls asleep, she watches him and begins to accept that they are now truly involved. Back at work, they continue to grow closer. He offers to ride with her, brings her coffee, and compliments her writing. She becomes increasingly nervous around him, unable to stop thinking about him. Before leaving, he gives her another small teddy bear and admits he was the one who placed it in the gift box. That night, she receives a private message from him which leaves her startled and thinking about him constantly. The next morning, she struggles to get ready, clearly exhausted. At work, she watches him during an important meeting, impressed by his abilities and success. As they leave, he invites her to take the train with him, but she panics and instead jumps onto a bus without even knowing where it's going. Later, during a quiet day at work, they decorate a Christmas tree after she had jokingly complained about it being bare. He surprises her by decorating it himself, even dressing festively. They spend more time together, sharing meals and conversations. He invites her to an art exhibition and suggests they go out together, just the two of them. Meanwhile, the virtual Lee continues to message her, making her feel even more torn. She realizes she's been drawn to the real Lee from the beginning. He tells her that love doesn't mean changing just because the other person does. This makes her reflect on her past relationship where her partner left because he couldn't handle her changes. When she questions Lee, he insists that staying consistent is simply who he is, though she internally feels that she shaped parts of him. He reassures her that even if feelings change, she won't be hurt, but that idea directly connects to her deepest fears. Holding her hand, he promises his feelings won't change and encourages her to stay grounded in reality. Despite this, she begins avoiding him, unable to face him directly. He notices and confronts her, asking if something is wrong. She explains she's been thinking about how to handle their relationship. He tells her to respect her own limits. She becomes overwhelmed by memories of the virtual version, warning her that she would end up alone and of her painful breakup in the past. At a team gathering, they're invited on a trip, but tension remains between them. One night, during bad weather, they share a taxi. When he offers his umbrella, she refuses. Emotions finally overflow and she breaks down, questioning why they should start something if it might end. He admits he's been changing since he started liking her, but didn't say anything because her struggle was even harder. They both cry and she gently touches his face. Before leaving, he gives her tickets to the exhibition and says he'll wait for her. He waits for a long time the next day, but she doesn't show up immediately. Eventually, she arrives, apologizing and saying she came to see him. They spend the day together watching a movie, eating, taking pictures, and their relationship truly begins. They start dating, showing playful and youthful affection. They grow closer, sharing late nights, conversations, and quiet moments. However, complications arise when issues with the app surface. A scandal begins and tensions rise at work. She becomes entangled in the situation, trying to protect others while hiding her own involvement. Eventually, the truth begins to unravel. Lee discovers hints about her connection to the virtual world. Confused and hurt, he distances himself. She tries to explain, but things remain tense. After emotional confrontations and misunderstandings, they are forced to face everything honestly. Despite the pain, they begin to understand each other more deeply. In the end, she makes a final decision regarding the virtual world, choosing to let it go completely. She says goodbye to that version of him, accepting the uncertainty of real life. The app even offers her a final option to end things, and she takes it. With that chapter closed, she fully commits to her relationship with the real Lee. This time, it feels genuine, stable, and real. She believes that now, things might finally work out the way she has always hoped.